Angela.
Hello.
So excited to have you on so many levels.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Of course. Well, we're kind of tackling a subject today that is a little bit new for Recovery Today, but really, really important. And so what we're going to talk about is your binge eating and what that looked like and what happened. What was your proverbial bottom?
Yeah, so I struggled for about a decade with a variety of different eating disorders. So it started for me as anorexia and then sort of morphed into bulimia that includes like the binge purge cycle.
Right.
And it was a long process to health with a lot of different, for me, there wasn't necessarily one rock bottom, but a lot of like skid out kind of valleys that I kind of fell into. I went to treatment twice. The first time was for anorexia, the anorexia portion. And it sort of, it helped a little bit. I got myself to a healthy weight with the help of a dietitian and therapists and a team. But, it's interesting when you talk with other members of the recovery community, drugs and alcohol, there's a lot of cross, and there's this idea of being a dry drunk, right? Like you're not using the habits, but your brain is still, and your lifestyle is still functioning very much in your addiction.
Angela, this whole thing about cross addiction is huge. I mean, people can get into, eating disorders or codependency or love addiction or sex or pornography or internet, workaholism. What do you think about that? And, why is it not being really addressed the way it should be? And I guess the bigger question is when you have an eating disorder, you still have to eat. And that's the biggest issue.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the thing that really differentiates eating disorders from like drug and alcohol addiction, because the tenets for most, as far as my understanding of AA and different recovery programs, almost always
abstinence.
Sure. Almost always. I've read about a couple of different other options, but that's like what's widely practiced.
I mean, there is something called harm reduction. So like, let's say you're a heroin addict, you might say, okay, just make sure you use a clean needle.
Right.
Or there's now programs they're using pot. And that's very controversial. So but mostly, abstinence. And you get into a danger area if you say, okay, maybe sometimes. That's a very dangerous place for many alcoholics and addicts.
Yeah, and so with eating disorders, you have to eat.
Exactly.
So the treatment is a little bit different, and the recovery practice is a little bit different because you can't just sort of flip a switch. You have to be incredibly, not that you don't have to be vigilant with drug and alcohol addiction, you do, absolutely. But it just requires perhaps a little more gray thinking. A lot of people who suffer from eating disorders.
Very black or white.
Very black or white.
Yeah.
So it's learning to live in this area that's gray, that's uncomfortable, where, one piece of cake doesn't mean
that you've ruined the
5
whole
cakes.
day, or whatever.
Exactly.
Or if I only exercised for 10 minutes, it means that I didn't do anything today. I mean, that's the biggest issue, is trying to get people to see the middle ground.
And it's really difficult. It's really difficult because the ways that malnutrition and binging and purging affect your brain chemistry reinforces the thinking.
Yeah.
So it's like this cycle that just sort of builds on itself, and it becomes really, really hard to get out of these lanes that your brain is
Exactly.
is
You kind of
navigating
have to like
through.
make friends with those parts of you.
Yeah.
And kind of like go and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really want to eat this, but you know what? There you are again. You're showing up. Oh, there you are, telling me not to eat this. That's bad. But you know what? I'm going to maybe like be curious about this and maybe eat it anyway. Or I guess that's sort of part of what you have to do.
Yeah, learning to sit with discomfort and learning to listen to the healthy self and help the healthy self heal the eating disorder itself.
Right, exactly. That's kind of a way of bringing them together, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So what did you mean by drinking was how you stopped binge eating? I mean, I go, wow, that's an interesting concept.
Well, it's a little bit of a exaggerated maybe a tiny bit for comedic effect. But when I was sort of in my rock bottom, I guess my bulimia was pretty out of control, and I had started to use drinking as part of my binging. So I would binge drink, I would black out and, you know, not remember things. And
on like an empty stomach, I would imagine.
Sometimes, yeah. So it's very, very dangerous for my body.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would wake up next to like my computer with eating disorder treatment centers searched.
Oh gosh.
And I would start calling recovery centers drunk. And so it was like my subconscious self was sort of reaching out for help. And the way I ended up in treatment was I thought I had scheduled an appointment with a therapist, but it turns out it was a treatment center.
So that's a miracle.
It is,
right?
It is.
Or a God shot.
Yeah, so so that's sort of where the joke comes from, that alcohol cured my eating disorder, because I got so obliterated that I had no other choice than to cry for help.
There may be somebody out there listening to this and say, oh, come on, you're just in denial. You were binge drinking? Come on, you have a problem with alcohol also.
Yeah, and you know, for me, I'm about 5 years into my recovery for my eating disorder, and stayed with my same therapist for a long time after. And I took 2.5 years off of drinking completely. The place I went to treatment, they make you sign a sobriety statement because so many people who struggle from eating disorders
also have a drinking issue.
Also have drinking or drugs or sex, or there's a lot of other things that come with it. It's very similar personality type, similar mechanisms at work.
So what I'm hearing is, and we can talk about what was underneath that was, you know, propelling you towards this eating disorder. But what I'm hearing is once you healed some of those issues, the drinking was no longer an issue.
Yeah, for me,
right?
it was more a tool that my eating disorder was using. I like drink really sort of casually now. Sometimes I drink, sometimes I don't. It's
right.
Once the eating disorder was tackled, it sort of became not very important to my life. So
it's an aspect of self-medicating that was going on. So was it early trauma, neglect, abandonment, relationship issues? I mean, what was like stirring this monster?
You know, I have always been a perfectionist. I've always been very driven and ambitious. I've heard people in the eating disorder community say that if you can take your eating disorder energy and rechannel it into something healthy, it actually is like a superpower. So
I love that.
Yeah, so I think these things that really contributed to my deterioration of my health now contribute to what makes my life great and makes me a unique person. It's just learning to rechannel some of those urges.
I couldn't agree more. I always, when I you know, my population that I work with as a therapist are addicts and alcoholics and some eating disorders, but mostly it would be more like binge eating and so forth. But I always say to them, you know, you are resourceful, you are powerful, you are creative. And like you said, if you just take that energy and move it into a direction that's positive, I love that. You're a superpower.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So you are a superpower.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you are. I mean, how did it change? What changed for you once you got well?
Yeah.
I got into recovery.
Yeah. So I went to what's called a partial hospitalization program. So it's 6 days a week. About, what was it, like 6-7 hours a day, I would be at a clinic, and I worked with dietitians, therapists, psychiatrists. We had group therapy, family therapy, individual therapy, therapy all day.
Yeah.
For
a lot of groups.
A lot of groups. For me, the main component that was the most helpful, well, they were all very necessary, but what I really needed was some structure, because, you know, 10 years into this, I just didn't know how to eat anymore. I wanted to get better, but I would look at, you know, a table full of food and I wouldn't.
You needed direction.
I didn't know what to do. Yeah. And I needed supervision and I needed accountability. And so having my meals in this safe place with my dietitian there, making sure I was getting everything I needed, making sure I was consuming it all and keeping it down. Doing that for, you know, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months in a row, it, you know, when you haven't been properly nourished for a decade, it's amazing how fast your brain can change when you're finally giving it
Wow. So what you're saying is you felt clearer, you were more awake, more present,
yes,
crisper. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You were like starving your brain in a way.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
you were. Yeah. And I understand we have serotonin in our gut too. Mm-hmm. So you're also, you're obviously affecting that area too.
Yeah.
By starving or binging or purging. Do you think being an actress? You're an actress and comedian. Do you think that has something to do with this? Always having the culture telling us that we have to be really thin and beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you think that played into it?
Definitely. I mean, I think, as a woman and as a man, I mean, the standards for men are ridiculous as well. It's everywhere. We're inundated with these images that are just impossible and really, really hard to see on a daily basis. And, we're fed this lie that our shape is our value, especially as women. And it's toxic.
Really toxic.
Yeah.
And I think that goes into a whole conversation about bullying. Did you ever experience anything like that? Or?
Yeah, I was definitely bullied. I was, a chubbier kid. And
okay.
I definitely felt, and I hear this a lot from people who are in recovery or experience eating disorders, this idea of being too much. I had such a big personality. I tried really hard. I loved school. I was a total nerd.
Okay.
And I was
we love nerds.
Nerds are great.
I'm a total nerd. I love nerds. Yeah.
But I was really teased for it, and I felt like I was too much. I was too big. I was too loud.
Oh, so kind of getting your voice down, not having a voice. So that's not the case anymore, right?
That's not the case anymore.
You do have a voice. Yeah, I can see that.
Yes.
So what is the voice doing these days? What kind of projects? Where can we find you?
Yeah. So the biggest project that I'm working on is a show called Binge.
Wow.
And it's based on this journey. And it starts with a character named Angela who drunkenly enrolls herself accidentally in treatment for an eating disorder.
So it's your story, pretty much.
Yeah, with some fabrications for dramatic effect in that. But yeah, it's based on my recovery journey.
That's beautiful. Is this your own project?
It is, and I partnered with a good friend of mine named Yuri Baranovsky, and he has a production company called Happy Little Guillotine Studios.
Okay.
And we all teamed up, and we made a pilot episode, 22-minute pilot of the show, and put it on YouTube just to see what people would think. And it kind of went viral and exploded on us in a way that
it created something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a need. There it is. And since this interview is for Recovery Today magazine, is there anything you might say to someone out there struggling with either drinking or an eating disorder, or a parent that has a child or a teenager or a young adult?
Yeah.
Well, what might you say to them to kind of inspire them?
I mean, it's such a basic thing to say, but I honestly didn't believe it until I was probably halfway through treatment, is that a different life is possible. And the brain is like amazing and so flexible, and you can change your thinking, and it will happen if you put the energy and have the right tools around you.
Yeah.
And that there are resources out there, and I know we're all strong and we want to white knuckle things, but it's okay if you can't do it alone. I couldn't do it alone.
You're so right about the change, because we do have neural pathways that can change.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand is where you are right now is not where you're going to be in 6 months of recovery.
Right.
You are going to see a change. You just don't know that because you're here and you're not there. So clearly, it made a huge difference in your life.
It really did.
And what do you do in the community for recovery? So I think you mentioned a nonprofit.
Yeah, so I work with this, I volunteer with this incredible nonprofit called Project Heal. And they provide treatment grants to individuals who are having trouble getting coverage for their treatment for eating disorders, because it's really difficult, as I'm sure you know, to advocate for yourself in the mental health sphere with insurance. It's really hard.
Yes.
And so this organization just is doing such beautiful work. They're really special. It was founded by these two women, Christina Saffron and Liana, I'm forgetting her last name. And they started this nonprofit when they were 16 years old, when they were in treatment for anorexia together, and they have grown it into this massive organization that has sent so many people into their recovery. It's really cool.
I mean, you know, we all know, you know, helping another alcoholic or helping another person with an eating disorder, there's nothing more powerful than giving back what was given to you.
Yeah.
I mean, being of service is really part of the whole messaging of recovery.
Yeah.
So how can people find you?
You can find me at, let's see, on Twitter. I'm at Angela Gulner. You can find Binge at bingetheseries.com.
Oh, perfect.
And we just finished, actually it's really exciting, we just finished a crowdfunding campaign, so we're making a full first season.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we're going to start shooting in about a month and a half, and hopefully release at the end of 2018. So
and
you
then
can
you shop it
follow the
around
show.
to maybe Amazon or Netflix. There's so many opportunities
today. So we'll sort of shop it around a little bit. So you can follow our journey there at bingetheseries.com, and we're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all of that.
Well, great.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Congratulations for everything you're doing.
Thanks.
And for coming today. And I
Thanks
really
for having
appreciate
me.
it. And I always do hugs at my end.
Yes, let's hug.
We have to hug.
Thank you so much.